Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. How are you doing on this fine Thursday? Did you catch the show yesterday? Coast to Coast Canadians. People loved it. Wasn't long enough was the only critique I got. We wanted to hear more, especially from Joe. A lot of people really like to hear from Joe Rampart, Kevin, or Gov Corrupt. People were very happy with that episode. And then at the end, I gave you guys a bit of a surprise on who's coming. This guy. He's here. And not only is he here, we already did a mic check. He is here. We connected already. He's early bird, ready to go. Nothing stopping Maxime. He wants to be here. So we sent him on to finish up his morning. He'll be back on the second hour as we work with the friends of the show to come up with fresh questions for Maxime. We're going to ask him things that we need to know, things that go unanswered, things that people speculate about. Let's get some real answers. Oh, and there's my dogs. Some of you keep asking, they want to see my dogs? There they are. So we're super excited to have him on. His mic worked, his video worked. He looks good. En français, en anglais, everything was good to go. Are you guys excited? I can tell by the chat, we have quite a few people here already. Good morning, True. You're first. You are first. Thank you so much for making it. You were here, half an hour early. You are the early bird. Second only, Scott. Hello, Mayor. Very, very excited to have you. Thank you very much for showing up again. And Scott's showing some love to True, which is wonderful. And I kind of got a surprise. I reached out to, I don't know if we're allowed to call him Dr. Makis or what, but I'm calling him Dr. Makis. He is a doctor. Whether they take his license away for speaking out about the truth or not, he's a doctor. And he'll be on the show. We're working out a date and time, but we're going to be speaking to him about Canada's vaccine injury program, the media, how they're hiding the information, the attack on him professionally. This is a big show. So I'll keep you posted on the date of that one. Good morning, Clay. Good morning, buddy. Really glad that you keep showing up. I hope you get something out of today's episode. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We're going to do our best to get to them all. And we already have Gov Corrupt, Donald Bez, Zach Schmidt. Everybody's hanging out in the lobby right now. And we'll be getting on to it, the meat and the potatoes of the show shortly. Good morning, Matt. Is that a new name? If so, welcome, my friend. Welcome. I hope you find what you're looking for here. And if not, I hope you get something out of it. But welcome, Matt. And then good morning, Patch. Thank you so much for chatting with everybody. Clash in Canada. I know I haven't seen that name before. Welcome. Thank you for joining our chat. I hope you get your questions answered and you enjoy the show. Make sure you do this, though. Make sure you guys subscribe. Please don't forget to subscribe, okay? I've got lots of guests lined up, a senator, a doctor, police officer. We got lots of people lined up to come talk to you. A CPC candidate or MP, used to be an MP. We got a whole bunch of people. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single show. It's best live so you can chat with us. But if you want to watch the replay, that's available too. So you guys getting very used to this now. All right. Good morning. Motown. Happy post-birthday. I hope yesterday was a great day for you. You enjoyed those ribs. And thank you very much for sharing that day with us. We appreciate that. And I'm glad Canada got to say good morning to you. Coffee is on and I'm ready for a great show. No pressure, huh? No pressure, Motown. But I'm happy to bring a show to you. And then, Clash in Canada. You're very chatty. Thank you. Welcome. Charlie, we haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. Nice to see you. How's Ottawa? I believe you're out there. Nice to see you. And then Ellen, welcome back. I know you're excited about this one. And Ellen, if you got questions, we know yours are good. So throw them in there. And Padge, make sure you do what you can to try and highlight those ones. It's going to be a busy morning. Matt equals Azario. Not this one. Padge, no, not this one. This is a different Matt. So good morning. Well, folks, they're here. So why don't we just start bringing people in? I'm going to bring them in by the time they showed up. So Gov Corrupt will be one of the first. And here he is. And we got Donald Best. And we got Zach Schmidt. And we are expecting a couple more people. Hi, everybody. Welcome from the car too there, Zach. That's awesome. Good morning. Good
Wonderful
morning.
to be here.
Hey, Donald. Wonderful to hear you too. Gov, can we get a mic check on you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Join your show.
Thank you for coming again. And then Zach, can we get a mic check on you while you're mobile? And we'll come back to Zach.
Today. So
yeah, you're gonna have to find a spot with some reception if you don't mind there, Zach. You are breaking up a little bit. Okay, cool. So, gentlemen, there's a couple more people that should be joining us, or yeah, 2 more. But for now, we can go ahead and get started. I know that some of you actually reached out to people that follow you, and I know that some of you said, "Hey, we're going to meet up with Max. Give me some of your questions." So, how did that go? Gub, we'll start with you.
Sorry, come again?
You were probably yeah. I said some of you were reaching out to your followers and saying, "Hey, look, I'm meeting up with Max. Do you get some questions?" And you were getting responses. So, how's that going for you? And you kind of getting ready with some questions?
Yeah, like I got my questions that I want to ask ready to go. There's a few questions that people reached out and wanted me to address. One was, the voter validity in Canada, which I think is a reasonable question to ask, and what Matt's take is on that. So that was the main theme. People really want to know what Max views on that and what his answer is going to be.
Okay, and what kind of questions have you been getting? Have they been related to policy? Have they been related to him? Have they been related to the party? What kind of questions are you getting?
Well, it's in terms of like I'm going to talk briefly about Chinese interference and David Johnson and all that is going on right now, right? So like we've been told by our intelligence community that our governments have basically been subverted for the last 3 decades. So it's probably a lot longer than that. And so if that's the case, and taking a look at PPC's polling and voting numbers, I think they got what 4.9% of the vote in the last election. So basically, call it a flat out 5. So people want to know is does he feel like maybe he's being capped? Is his target being capped at 5%, or is there something else going on? Some dynamics with other parties, or is there is this actually some sort of interference from a foreign entity?
Well, it's been a good increase over the 2 elections he's been in. So could it be a trend, or do you think it's already plateauing? Is that your question?
Yeah, and we don't have enough data to see if it's a trend yet, right? We only have 2 data points, 2 elections, right? So you need at least 3 data points before you can see a trend. So I guess the next election will be the indicator as to what the trajectory is, if it's going to plateau or continue to rise, I guess. But the main benefit between his results in this election versus the previous election was that now at least he has the ability to go do debates. Like he can join the debates, whereas previously he couldn't because he didn't have enough representation last time to be able to be allowed to join.
Okay, cool. So a lot of the more recent events and stuff that are tackling the government in general. So past government, current government, and you're wondering how he's going to get involved and impact that. Is that kind of where you're headed with that question?
Yeah, and so right now, the way I see it, there's only one person that's really holding up this government, and that's Jagmeet Singh, right? In Canada, the most powerful person is the person who holds the balance of power, right? So Jagmeet Singh he's the one that really holds the balance. So he, with his merger of the Liberals, and everybody knows this, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. He's the one that's propping up this liberal regime, and he's the one that's saying, "Oh, we need to have an inquiry. We need to get to the bottom of this." But if he's such a defender of democracy and a protector of rights, why doesn't he let the people give their say? All he has to do is vote non-confidence, trigger an election, and then and then he'll let the people, vote with how they feel. But he's not doing that. So I think that we need to put more pressure on Jagmeet Singh, and I think Max is somebody that has the ability to do that.
Great question, and I think Jagmeet knows he won't, or Jagmeet knows he won't win an election. That could be why he's doing that too. I don't think he feels confident.
And his party's bankrupt.
And because of him, he's losing a ton of support. Donald, same question. You've been reaching out to some of your followers, trying to bring in some questions, and if so, what's it looking like? Where are they headed with their question?
Sure. Excuse me. So, as you know, I just started a major series on the trans-industrial complex, and that's of course influenced many of my followers who have read it. But the questions related to that are, most people were in the dark about the horrific sterilization and mutilization of vulnerable children and young people. Nobody really had an idea what that was. We thought the trans community was men dressing in dresses. I mean, really, we did. Yeah. And now there's a strong and growing resistance to this. But of all the major parties and all the leaders, Max Bernier and the PPC are the only ones who have come out against it. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party have voted for Bill C6, which is criminalizing parents who want to stop their children from cutting off their privates. I know that sounds outrageous. I mean, if I said that 10 years ago, everybody would have laughed at me. What we know what it's all about. I could show you pictures. We've all seen the horrific pictures. It's just I don't really know how we got here, and that's the question that seems to be coming up on my feed with my readers about that subject. How did we ever get here?
So you want to know, can we stop this slippery slope? Can we reverse it? Can we get back up?
It's not a slippery slope. We have plunged off the cliff, and we are heading down. Thousands and thousands and thousands of children and young people in Canada alone have had these operations in one hospital in Montreal. They brag about it. So they're coming from all over the world there. Apparently we're leading the industry in the world in this, along with some other countries. So
that's wonderful.
Max has come out and spoken very strongly against this. I'd like to hear what people are telling him. Now, the second thing is foreign aid. As you know, Canada's governments, especially this one, but every government going back, has seen billions and billions given away to, well, people who hate us, people who are the opposite of what Canadians believe in. At the same time, we have hundreds of communities in Canada that don't even have clean, pure drinking water. Last week, we shut down a hospital in Minden, Ontario. It's been there ever since I was born. We shut it down. And yet we continue to send billions and give away our sovereignty to global entities like the WEF and the UN. What does Max say about that?
Right.
What can he do about it, especially as just one man? That's it.
Awesome. So you're looking for gender ideology and explanation around that, and then you're wanting to know about taking money out of Canada to help others when we still need our help here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whether it's for wars or programs to sterilize people in Africa, which we contribute to millions to, or doesn't charity begin at home? Shouldn't we get people off the streets? Shouldn't we bring back our manufacturing so that people can have the dignity of work? Of course, the answer is yes to all these things. Right. But if we get just one seat in Parliament, will it make a difference? I have my answer, but I'd like to hear it from Max.
Well, I'd like to see what happens. That would be great. And great questions. Zach, we'll go to you next. You were next in line. Hopefully you got some good reception there.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Small delay, but we can hear you. That's fine.
Okay.
So
perfect.
You as well, did you reach out to your followers? Are you trying to collect some questions from people? And if so, where are they leading or where are they headed with the questions?
Well, I took kind of a different approach to it because I recently had Max on my show, and there were some things that
Mhm.
I wasn't able to ask. Just I only had a 30-minute spot with him. So the big topic that I wanted to talk about was abortion, and this was prior to him announcing his private members bill that he intends to bring up in the House of Commons. But what I would like to actually have clarification on is where he stands on it. Would he qualify himself as being pro-life or anti-abortion? I know Andrew Lawton had tried to squeeze an answer out of him, and Max kind of dodged it a little bit. So I would like to see a firm answer on that, because I think that there's lots of critics within the CPC that are kind of pointing fingers at him as far as, like, doing this as far as strategy. My pushback to them was always, well, if Pierre had done the same thing, would you be saying the same thing about Pierre? And I don't think that's necessarily true. But lots of people are saying that it's just a pander for votes in Portage-Lisgar. So I would like maybe just a little bit more clarification on his personal stance and what he would like to see Canadian law be around abortion. It's obviously a hot topic down in the States. Trudeau brings it up whenever he needs some clicks. So let's get a concrete answer. What's Max's stance on abortion? What would he actually like to see in Canada? The other question that has kind of come up just over the last little bit, and that I've been pushing for a bunch on Twitter, is will we see a debate between him and Brandon? I would extend that out to the other people as well, the other candidates running. But that's what I would like to know. And if so, why is Brandon avoiding this? Either what he is suspecting of Brandon trying to avoid, or is there something bigger at play why a debate's not going to happen? I personally think that a debate should happen. It should be a requirement of all
Yeah.
candidates to be active in at least one debate amongst all of them. I know in an actual election cycle you would have multiple leadership debates, but let's get some candidate debates. I know there's one recently for the other riding in Oxford, right? So why is there not one happening in Portage-Lisgar?
Well, I think the quick answer is Conservative Party don't think they're going to lose, and they got nothing to gain with one. That could be why. But I agree with you. I think every single election should have at least one debate amongst the candidates. And if there's only one candidate for whatever reason, they should at least go on explain to us what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, let's hold
So
their
hopefully,
feet to the fire.
yeah, hopefully you can ask your question in person. So hopefully you're able to make that work. But if not, we'll try and relay that question for you, especially about the abortion. So your two questions were no debate, why, and abortion, where do you stand?
Yeah.
Okay. Azario, you're next, bud. Same type of questions. I think I saw you reach out to your followers as well. Did you get some feedback, and where are you headed with your question?
Yeah, sadly, no. I did reach out to my followers. I didn't really get much in the way of participation on that. I think it was maybe a little bit of a short notice. But I think the themes that I really want to concentrate on this morning are around integrity, especially with special interest groups, corporations, now in foreign entities. How can we, how is Max and his party going to insulate themselves from that, put checks and balances in place that are going to prevent, that type of corruption from occurring within his party? And I think the second theme that comes out of that is around political reform, and what does Max's party support in terms of equal representation for the population of our diverse and geographic regions. There's so many different ones that I could go around, but those I think are the main themes I want to concentrate on.
So the first one's around your new party. How do you have control of the people? And then the second one, sorry, I didn't quite grab that when I was doing coffee.
Is around political reform.
Reform, right?
Yeah. So representation for representing those diverse geographic regions instead of just the kind of the 416, if you may.
So we'll see if he's talking about whips or no whips and forcing the platform on representation, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'd love to know the answer to that one as well. Where is he on the whips or whip-like? You may not have a whip, but do you have whip-like activity? Right? So we'll check into that. Thanks, Azario. Joe, welcome back to the show. It's time for you to go.
Good morning, Canada. Good morning, Jason. It's a sunny day in Northern Alberta. Thank you for the opportunity to participate and contribute. What a day.
My pleasure, my brother.
Folks, I've heard some really interesting questions here. And for what I did last night, I opened up a Twitter space and asked the question, Canadians, what questions do you have for Max? Well, 3 hours later and 297 listeners and 16 speakers later and a massive bubble thread and lots of discussion and conversations, I've got about 4 hours of questions for Max.
Wonderful.
But
We'll see if we can extend.
Hmm?
We'll see if we can extend that full
Yeah.
4 hours.
Well, the space was recorded, so I was going to throw a copy of the space up at Danielle and at Max and a few of the other, or Daniel and a few of the other people in PPC world, and it's also available on my timeline on Twitter if anybody from this group would like to go and listen to it. Of course, please do just fast forward through all of Rampart's babblings and just go right to the people. But just to quickly go over some of the questions that I have. One question was what is Max's plan or the PPC? And I always refer to it as the PPC, but most people are responding, what is Max's plan? But what is the plan to defend our Arctic interests? Further to that, are we looking at wanting to develop the Great White North? So that was a great question. Another question, a few of the conspiracy questioners are always asking, like, are you a Freemason? This was an interesting one where it leads into the WEF connection. But I think a lot of that was exposed last night by Max as well as by Andrew Layton. And this has kind of been dealt with, but I'll say it anyway. They're asking if you weren't at the WEF conference, then you clarify you were there, then you meet other ministers, but not for the conference. However, the press release for your trip to Davos quotes you saying otherwise, and the press release from the Canadian government was provided as justification for asking that question. What about advertising on legacy media, MSM media, to reach a wider audience outside of what we're reaching now? Another question, how about developing oil and energy refinery in Canada? Is that a syrup? Or pardon me, is that a goal or an issue? Then it devolved into a maple syrup conversation. Then we got back to how will Max prepare Canada against an assault on the American and Canadian dollar versus the growing BRICS, which was an interesting question because it zeroes right in on the BRICS question. One guy, Canadian Dad, asked, will Max work to restore the jobs and benefits of government and the armed forces members who refused the vaccine? We had one question here that seems to drive some people crazy, is why is Max not readily available to people as a leader of the party? Because that would be a direct contrast to the other parties, which would set the PPC apart. My response to that was, what do you think tomorrow's about, and why am I asking you a question tonight to ask Max tomorrow? So I think I pretty much answered that one for them.
And I'll say there was no trouble. It was within a few hours of reaching out. They were reaching back. CPC, no response from them. Liberal, no response from them. Not even lower down the totem pole. I'm getting nothing.
Me too. I invited 100 staunch conservatives, one from Kelowna, who I know is an absolute conservative, true and blue to the toes, and a ridiculer of Max and the party, but he had zero interest in participating in the discussion last night. I found that to be very odd. And then there was as you and I, we've spoken, Jason, there's a particular movement on Twitter and other social medias where they're considered to be rabid PPCers. They're not very well respected, I guess would be one way to say it. It was a challenge to keep that crew from grabbing mics and just adding to the chaos of the space last night. I kept it fairly well curated and controlled. But those were some great questions. I got a slew of DMs, a lot of hate, a lot of love. About 50-50 on that. But there was one question here. From a fiscal position, will the PPC or will Max take the Bank of Canada to task, reorganize our monetary policy, and reintroduce a sound monetary policy for Canada? and deal with the creditism and the unstoppable collapse of collection of our hard-earned tax money. You know, there are lots of questions, lots of people asking questions, and I think that's a fantastic thing. So that's
Awesome.
kind of what I got there. I really think that, again, the WEF question needs to be fairly well articulately answered. And for some reason in the back of my mind, I'm thinking there needs to be some serious, and I liked Max's post about it on the 30th, March 30th, when he put it up. And I think that's one that we would need to push hard in order to answer that question when people bring that up. But I'm looking forward to this. And as you can see, we were able to generate some serious interest on Twitter last night. 297 people tuned in. And I haven't even checked on the replay list to see how many people replayed it overnight or in the early morning here. Let's take a quick peek. And here, and why isn't it bringing it up? Let's go this way. There we go. So far, we had like 267 were in and out of the space last night. And so far, we've had 51 replays. So it got some movement out there, my friends. So the questions have been asked, and that was my contribution. I could probably throw in a whole lot more personal questions that I have, but I'll go with the more important ones that Canadians have for Max.
No problem. Now, for me, what I did is I reached out as well, and I've got a lot of questions related to what he would do if he was the leader of Canada, like if he became the PM. And a lot of these questions I heard today would also fall into that category because they're all like party in power type of questions or strong opposition if they have that power. Max won't be having that anytime soon. At best, he's going to get one, maybe two. If the cards line up, maybe 3 seats. So my question is going to be around what could you practically do at this point? If you get 1 seat, 2 seats, what will that do? Will that move the needle at all? So where I'm going to go with mine is around accountability and can you start exposing anything? So what can you do as with the MP powers? Can you call inquiry? Can you do a private member's bill? What's the practical first step you're going to do on day one? Week 1, month 1, what could we expect to come out of you? He certainly won't be able to change, policies for foreign funding or the North or anything like that this year. But my question would be around what is the first thing you're going to do? And then we've got lots out of people around free speech. So they're curious about free speech, free media. Sorry, I'm going to mute somebody's mic because that allows us to free expression, be able to talk. So C11, what's his take around C11? Is it going to impact us in this kind of format? And could he put any resistance to it right now? C21, where is he standing on that one? I think he's been pretty vocal, but let's, get him to finally say C21's got to go. And then abortion. I agree. I think it was Zach who mentioned that we need to get an answer on abortion. So those are where I'm headed. I want to kind of see what can he practically do on day 1, week 1, month 1 as an MP and explain to us what kind of powers does an MP have that he would leverage. Because what we need to see from him is lots of action way beyond any other MP. The expectations for him is double or triple from any other MP. And if he doesn't raise himself to those levels, people are going to see that as a failure. His expectations are going to be way higher than any other MP if he gets in there. So that's kind of where I'm headed with that one. And Donald, you're not wrong about this WEF stuff. It got pretty ugly yesterday. I had Andrew on the show. I respect Andrew. But Andrew put out a thread that was really supportive of Pierre and didn't talk about Pierre's contribution to the WEF. So I did. If you go to the Wayback Machine, and here's a video I put together, you can actually see that not only is Justin on the WEF website here, but Pierre was. He's not there today, as this video is showing, but what you do is you go to what's called the Wayback Machine. You drop in this link, and I'm about to do that right here in the video, and then you'll be able to see for like 20 years of internet activity when this page did exist. So Pierre was on the website. He definitely was. And I want people to understand that Pierre was added April 1st, 2021, along with 4 other conservative MPs. He's the only one of that group that was removed. And I think if you have the power to remove yourself from this website, either remove everybody, not just yourself, or make sure that well, actually, explain why you were there in the first place. Like Pierre hasn't actually covered that, and Andrew didn't cover that. Andrew just wanted to highlight that people were there, Max was there, and it could be proven that Max was there. But Max has admitted he was there. But Andrew was also there, so I'm not sure if that matters, whether or not people were attending. I think the question is going to be around whether or not you are a member. Let me unmute everybody. So now let's have an open discussion and talk about what we want to get out of Max. Oh, hey, Azario. And if we can kind of get some good questions formulated out of this. And Joe, you muted yourself. I can't unmute you. Okay, let's go to Kevin. Kevin, I think you were next to chat.
Yeah. So what are we trying to establish here? Sorry, I'm doing stuff in the background. So
no problem. We are all multitasking. So what I'm trying to do now is to come up with a new question. We've all laid out what we were going to ask. Let's see if there's another question on the table, maybe around his WEF, because that's topical right now. That came out last night. Yeah, I'm just trying to fish out some more questions.
So like the one thing that like I asked in one of these conversations that seemed to take off on Twitter is that if people want to condemn Max, so let's just say, okay, he went to the WF, even though if he did, he didn't. Okay, that just say, okay, he was at the WEF. Just assume that, even if it's not true or not. So even if we're going to condemn Max for going to the WEF, why are we also not condemning the party that he was a part of when that happened? So I think that's a very important question, because the only people that seem to be attacking him for being part of this, this WEF movement is the conservatives, when he was a conservative MP at the time. So to me, it doesn't really make sense. It's not really a question that is logical to me, because they're basically trying to throw him under the bus while excusing the party that he was at because they support that party. So I don't understand that.
That's a good point. It's the CPC supporters who are highlighting this today, but it's the CPC supporters forgetting it was Harper who brought him there. And he also brought.
Well, I think a lot of those PP supporters are not really ordinary supporters as we think of them. Okay. I'm getting a concerted effort, call them trolls, call them bots, but they're real human beings. There's a real effort, even right now on this show, commenting on the show on Twitter and such. And, that strategy of pointing at Maxime Bernier for going to the WF meeting, he's made his position on the WF and Canadian sovereignty very clear, as far as I'm concerned, even as far back as the 2019 election. He's made his position very clear. Mm-hmm. But we have a continued push by the Conservatives and by the Uniparty to give away our sovereignty, to implement Agenda 2030, which was agreed to by the Conservatives, along with Agenda 2015 at the time. So a lot of these questions that we're getting concerning Max's attendance a couple of times at a few meetings are strategically delivered by an army of Conservative supporters who are speaking in one voice, which also, which ignores the Conservatives' policies today of 2030, the Green Agenda. They're all on board of that. So I think we have to be careful about how much credibility we give to the army of trolls or Conservative supporters who are out there on the internet. So let's be careful how much credibility we give to them asking that question. We know why they're asking it.
And what I wanted to say, you go ahead, Kevin.
So what I wanted to say is, like, we know that public opinion manipulation is one of the biggest things that drives political clout, right? So are you trying to say that maybe there's an effort, like a group of agitators or whatnot, like bot accounts, or like a combination of multiple things that are colluding to try to manipulate public opinion to support one idea over another? Is that what we're trying to get here, Don?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that there is a conservative war room and group out there on social media. I mean, we are, most of us here on the show, I think, are pretty organic. But I think that there is an army of volunteers and paid social media specialists out there that are doing their best, and it's fabulous that they're targeting Maxime Bernier and the PPC. They really fear him. I mean, when Polyev was in Manitoba and out west, he wasn't talking about the Liberals and Trudeau. All he could talk about was Maxime Bernier, and that's great.
I agree with that. I see that. I get that as well. I'm getting a lot of trolls online. And Azario, are you seeing that as well? Are you seeing them attack?
Well, I think this is a continuation of really the changing the perception of what the PPC party, Max Bernier, represent, because they came out very early and was labeling them far right, anti-vax, science deniers, flat earthers, whatever you want to say, but that kind of brand, that label is stuck a little bit, and I think that they're just trying to amplify that and really undermine the credibility.
And then Zach, same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of grew up. I grew my Twitter following in the pits of this battle before I got banned, and I can definitely agree. Since coming back to Twitter over the last couple of months, there's a concerted effort to be able to discredit the PPC no matter what, and it's the same old arguments that Max has kind of addressed in the past, and that the PPC supporters have addressed. And it just seems to keep coming back to these certain arguments. So there is an effort to try to discredit the party, which does show that they're desperate. And I think that kind of goes back to when I was talking about the debates, as you're correct, is there's no gain for them to debate Max, because Max will expose them on all of this stuff. And when we're looking at things such as the World Economic Forum, Agenda 2030, when Max was in the party, that wasn't even a talking point. It wasn't until he left and probably started talking with people like Mark Friesen where it was actually brought up and started becoming popular to talk about. I would say probably around that 2019, for sure, during the age of COVID. So for lots of the criticism of Max, again, Kevin talked about it, this was all while he was already in the party. So when these people are coming forward, I think it's maybe a little bit easier to just dismiss them, because people on our side know what's up, but it's the people that are reading this, maybe just getting a political awakening, that are seeing this and saying, well, this is what's up with Max, and they don't know the facts. So I don't know if there's a right way to address that with him today, to be able to kind of quell the bots and the Twitter trolls, but it's definitely something that they should be aware of.
Yeah, and I do believe, and Focus to Life has got it right here. How does anyone learn firsthand about the enemy unless they attend their conferences events? So he was Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, was he not? So is that not something that Minister of Foreign Affairs should be keeping an eye on, which would be a collection of other governments coming together in one spot to talk about policy? So you would expect him to be there. Doesn't mean he's a supporter, doesn't even mean he's counter, but it is his job at the time, and he was sent there. Now,
well, someone on Twitter posted a really good post. I got invited to a wedding, but I didn't go, but I'm still on the invite list, right? So it could be a scenario like that. And his involvement with it directly, as far as him being a part of it, or him even just attending there, again, in 2008 was a completely different beast.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you definitely want to keep an eye on the enemy. That's why I have, I bought their book and I'm reading it. Because without knowledge, how are you going to work against them in any way, shape, or form? And then Karen here brought out, definitely, as a matter of fact, back in 2018 and 2019, when the PPC was getting started, there was a bunch of them that were on the PPC purge effort. I also want to bring us back to Mark Friesen. in my video interview with him, he actually covered that particular topic on when he introduced Max to the 2030 agenda. Now, if you watch the video, or if you follow Mark Friesen, he's been on top of it for a long time. And his story was he got Max into a car and got to drive him around as part of going out and meeting people. And while he had him as his hostage, as Mark puts it, he educated Max on a bunch of things. It was after that that Max said, you know what, Mark, you're not wrong. And from then we saw a lot of push out of Max. So on a timeline thing, he was in the PPC, he was in the CPC party, got sent over there as his job, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, looked at this thing, maybe didn't understand it fully, maybe they didn't trust him like that and they didn't show it to him fully. Later, when he leaves the party, he gets educated on it by someone else who can show them the documents and the information. And then from that point on, he makes a decision that he's not for it. That's exactly what you want from a leader, I think, because at least he's getting involved and he's open to looking at the information. And then from that, make new decisions. I don't have a problem with any of that, but some people will absolutely twist that into something it's not. And let me go to Kevin. Thoughts on that? You're muted, bud. Maybe I did that to you.
To add to the kind of like going a little bit to another point here, another thing that really bothers me that I see a lot is this talk about vote splitting. Like, oh, so the CPC. So first of all, I want to let everybody know that I don't support either party. I don't advocate for either party. I'm just giving my views as the way I see it, right? So the CPC has kind of set itself up where, oh, a vote for NDP is a vote for Trudeau. A vote for Trudeau is a vote for Trudeau. A vote for, Maxime Bernier is a vote for Trudeau, but a vote for CPC, and you're going to have the best country in the world, and we're going to be, the bastion of freedom. But what's going to happen, like we saw in Alberta, right, with Danielle Smith's win, and you had the CPCers, they're like, yeah, Danielle Smith, and then she won, and then right off the bat, like less than a week later, she's already going on this wokeness, right? Like, you can say that it was some presser that does it. Does she agree with it or not? That's not the point. The point is she put it out there, right? And then the CPCers were like, oh, you know what? Then they were defending her and then saying, oh, well, at least she was better than Notley. So like, I think that's going to be the sort of situation that will come to fruition if Pierre wins. The people that are like, oh, we just have to get, Justin Trudeau out. We have to kick him out of office. And then Pierre comes in and like screws everything up like most politicians do. And then the people are just going to say, oh, at least he's better than Trudeau. So I think that we set the bar so low for these politicians that as long as we're just doing better than the other team, who really cares what trajectory in the country is going in? And in terms of vote splitting, like, it doesn't really make sense to me. To me, it's just more of an authoritarian tactic used on the collective to manipulate them into staying with the group, right? So it's trying to, it's kind of like a cult, right? Like, there's people that use this idea of vote splitting, because for me, I'm an individualist. I don't care what anybody's doing. I vote, if I were to vote, for who I think would best represent me. I don't vote for who would best represent the collective, because I think that in order for the collective to be the most successful, and every single individual within that collective has to do what's best for him or herself, not what's best for the collective. So I think that's a very important thing that we have to take a look at, is this whole idea of vote splitting and how it's just ultimately nonsense.
I agree completely with that. Vote splitting is the most undemocratic comment ever, because it's basically telling you, don't go with what you want, do what we want. So vote splitting is so undemocratic, and I'm so sad that it keeps coming up as a reason people believe they should get behind a party. Democracy is about having your say, and whatever comes out is what comes out. And if people want a liberal, then they get the liberal. If they want conservative, they get conservative. But to force them into one of the two camps and never have a third, that's not very democratic. I'm going to go to Joe next. Thoughts on that one?
I think back to what was going on in the world geopolitically in 2008, 2009, when Max attended the WEF as Minister of Foreign Affairs. Definitely his laser-like focus on his portfolio at that time was trying to have Canada contribute to the solution that was apparent in Afghanistan at the time. So my question would be, is the purpose of the visit? It's obvious it was for the business of Canada. It was not for the purpose of the business of the WEF. So I think the answer is fairly clear, and Max has been even more clear about the answer. So it's time to put that particular question to bed and get on to the more important ones. Again, there were a lot of questions, a lot of comments and discussion about what would Max's response be to conditions and situations and it seems as if the party was actually sitting there with the majority and can make a difference. But the greatest question that I've heard so far has come from you, Jason, and from the other guests here that have asked the question, as a single seat party or a 1 or 2 seat party, how on earth are we going to make a difference? How are you going to make a difference? That's the greatest question on the table today, my friend.
Thank you very much, Joe. And yeah, because that's the practical one, because he's not going to be leading the government anytime soon. So the practical question is, what can you do as an MP? And as a candidate, I actually want to know that answer. What can we do as an MP? I might be voted in as an independent. There's no party, so I'm going to be a solo guest. So I'd like to know, what powers does the MP have? What can I do? Private member bill, investigations, just go keep knocking on the door till they answer. What can you do as a single seat? So that's my driving question there. I'm going to go to Donald next. Hold on, let me grab your video here, Donald, and go ahead and unmute you. Donald, same question.
Well, I think the point that's been brought up about the fact that this issue of splitting the vote, I think, is probably the most important campaign question that Maxime has to answer, because frankly, people are like sheep, and we're also very loyal and many people have been conservatives and liberals and NDP for decades. They know something's wrong. They feel something's wrong. They see evidence before their own eyes, but they just can't bring themselves to mark that other box. And I think that's the greatest problem that Maxime and the PPC have, is to just get people to give it a try. The by-election is a great opportunity for that, because as people do point out, it doesn't matter who wins this seat in the great scheme of things for
That's
who's
correct.
going to form the next government. But it will put at least one member of the opposition in Parliament against the uni party. And that's why we must see Max win a seat.
I agree completely on that one. This can be, we can call it an experiment. We can call it whatever we want. But Max winning this seat and Kelly winning in Calgary isn't going to change the PM, isn't going to change their agenda, isn't going to change much. However, what it can do is it's going to show us, what can the PPC do? Are they all talk, no bite? Are they all bark, no bite? Or will they go in there and we'll see feathers everywhere because they've ruffled them all up? I really think Canada, this is an opportunity to find out, is the PPC party really going to be an opposition for us, a conservative-based opposition, or not? And what's the risk? It's a half term. So Manitoba, you're used to having big names in this one. You had Candace. Don't put somebody I can't even remember the last name of. Put somebody in there that's going to make some noise, get in there and oppose. The entire purpose is to oppose the government. Max, I think, not only will do that, he has to. He has 2 years to prove to everybody if he gets in. He has 2 years to prove he can do that. And if he doesn't, well, it's going to be an easy election in Portage-Lisgar next time. But if he does, well, we're going to start seeing a lot more purple get in there, because that is the opposition now. So I agree with you, Donald. This is Canada's chance to find out. Take it for a test drive, because there's no risk. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the other panel, the rest of the panel. Anybody that wants to speak to that, go ahead. Everybody, you got your mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'll take first crack, because I really didn't answer this vote splitting issue. And I think, Donald, you brought it right up to the front there. It's vote splitting is not even an issue at this stage of the game. it is basically a two-party race. It's either Brendan or Max, and it's very riding specific. As to a vote split on a national level, we'll approach that in October, probably in the political season of the summer of 25. I don't see that as a big issue, as more and more people will wake up to the truth, to the uniparty, and make the appropriate decisions at that time. And we'll see that I believe we'll see it in the spring of 25, when people are starting to really start to make a decision as to what direction this country needs to go, because we're stuck in lockstep with the uniparty until such a time. We all acknowledge as PPC supporters that the balance of power for our current uniparty is actually held by 14 MPs in Western Canada flying the NDP flag. Those are the individuals that are truly responsible for a vote split when it comes to evaluating that in the future. But right now, what we need to do is get things very clear so that Max can get that seat and start the process. So that's my comment on that.
That's awesome. And I agree. Vote splitting is a non-issue. Let me go to the questions we did collect. So we did collect a bunch of questions from you guys. So let me let you know which ones we've got. And let me just make sure I got some. Oh, sorry, Azario, you were next. My bad. You were next.
Yeah, no problem. Sure. I just wanted to actually bring up a slightly different topic, which was around encouraging, kind of our population to get involved in politics, make themselves educated, looking at Gen Zs, millennials, how can we get more people out participating, being knowledgeable, doing kind of a research on the parties that are involved and who their candidates are, and then ultimately making a choice and calling that vote when the time comes. I think that we're sitting back because our last federal election had something like 47 or 48% participation. I might be wrong there, but I might just be completely talking out of my but so but I thought it was very low throughout the last federal election. And how can we drive that to a higher number so that we do have an adequate representation of our population?
That's an awesome question. And from the numbers, the biggest segments that are moving to the PPC party are NDPers and non-voters, people that haven't voted before. So the PPC party itself is drawing in that group you're talking about there, Rosario. And I'm not sure if other parties are doing that, but PPC is bringing a lot in from the non-voter group, or traditionally not voter group. Some of the questions we collected from the chat includes Ellen. I would like to know if he has a solution for the free speech, hate speech laws. Great. And we're going to use free speech to talk about that. And Ellen also came up with, similarly, will he protect free expression through religion, or will he allow people to be arrested for simply worshiping and praying? Awesome question there, Ellen. We'll try and get that one in there. Sorry, Kevin, I'm just going to mute you quick. Focus to life. Soros perfected the art of creating chaos. When Gov controls emergency protocols of pandemics, fire, flood, emergency, economy, it's over. How can we stop the foreign interference of WEF China? That's a whole episode, Focus to Life, but let's see if we can get a quick answer out of him on that one. And by the way, I'd love to host a particular episode on that one. Ellen, another one, and she even says another one. How will we ensure that a deal like Singh and Trudeau does not render a minority government unaccountable? Ellen, we need a people-led, no confidence initiative. We can't leave it up to just MPs. I'm not saying remove their power, keep it, but also add the power that Canadians can trigger that. Clash in Canada. I'd like to see if we can do anything about the Gov wanting COVID payments back from small businesses when the country is dishing out monies to other countries unnecessarily. Absolutely. There was 1 million Canadians too that had to pay back, not just small business, but 1 million Canadians had COVID payments clawed back from them, to great detriment to them. So it's a good question there, Clash. Focus to life. Abortion plus all other legal murders by Gov policies, right? Euthanasia. We got maids. We've got a bunch there, buddy. Connected to, as one concern. A decent society must have a moral foundation, respect for life, protecting children from harm, and domestic values. Focus, it's pretty sad that we have to say that out loud. That's pretty sad that we have to say that out loud. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Ellen, made in Canada, right? Made in Canada. It's horrible. Ellen, Clash is responding to Ellen. Exactly made. It's a brutal form of government willing to free up monies by not helping people live, but rather die. Yeah, and it's only the vulnerable, and the entire system is meant for the people who can no longer contribute. And they just call that end of life. I guess end of value is what they should be calling it. Because when you have no value left, the country is willing to assist you in checking out. It's horrible. Clash again. All parties need to be worried about Maxime Bernier. The way society is waking up, the liberal PC, etc., should be concerned. Sorry, I will take this one out of my question list, but that's a great comment, Clash, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And does he have an answer for putting measures in place to protect the people from a rogue PM? That's tough. That's tough because what are the measures? What are the measures? Who gets to trigger what's rogue? What is rogue? That's such a tough one. But I think if we let the people have some sort of way to vote, referendum, or whatever for non-confidence, that's the trigger for it. Why can't citizens go ahead and trigger that one? So that's where I'll be on that one. But let's see what he says, Alan. So we got some great questions there. And let me just double check the chat. Last few. Do we have any last questions there? Nope, but Peter has a great comment here. Most folks wish to vote on policy, but have only party to choose from. Why vote at all? 100%, Peter. First past the post. That's our electoral system. That's where the problem is, in my view. It requires you to be popular, not smart. It's just popular. And you wouldn't do that for your surgeon. You don't want the most popular surgeon. You want the most competent surgeon. But yet we do that for our leader, which is arguably a far more important position when it comes to your daily life. All right, folks, we got 3 minutes, and he was very punctual. So I do expect him to be punctual in this one. Any other comments from my panel here?
Hey, Jason, I got to drop out here. I do appreciate you hosting this and having Max on. So best of luck for you guys asking questions, and have a good day, y'all. Okay,
Zach, I think we got your question, so we'll get to ask for you, bud. Kevin?
Well, one thing I wanted to address on, and I'm really interested to hear what Max has to say on this too, is the idea of free speech. For free speech versus hate speech, right? Because for me, hate speech is just an authoritarian term that's used to shut down free speech. And if you truly believe in free speech, it's not to protect the views that you like, it's to protect the views that you don't like. So you're not standing up for what they're saying, you're standing up for their right to say it, because you don't want to be targeted when you have something that others may like, and then they try to shut you down. So that's what I see about free speech versus hate speech.
Bonjour, Maxime. Welcome.
How are you?
Very good. And you walked into the very first question, and we're going to use free speech, free expression to answer that question. So his question was using free speech. It's important to protect it, not just for our speech, but for everybody's speech. And it doesn't seem like the other side understands that when we're trying to fight for free speech, we're also fighting for their ability to have free speech. So the first question for you is, how are you going to maintain and help us ensure that we continue to have free speech?
Yes, right now in Canada, we have a clause in the criminal code against hate speech. And now the federal government is pushing another definition of hate speech, a larger definition of hate speech in different legislations. We don't need that. We had that definition in the criminal code for a lot of time. And so now it's a way for the government and politicians to censor us. Because, as you know, I can say something that you don't like, and that must be free speech. And you must be able, and I must be able to say what I want, and I must be able to insult you if I want to. So, in a free society, you must be able to discuss different point of view and being free to do that. But it's not the case right now because of our human rights. The different human rights tribunals all across the country at the provincial level, they're the kind of the police of thought, and you can complain and they will do an investigation, and maybe you will have to pay a fines and you'll be guilty of hate speech. But we must not go there. We must abolish and repeal all these legislation and only do what we did in the past. It is in the criminal code, and that's it. But we don't need to have a new definition of hate speech, and that's what we have in our country. And that's why, people feel that they cannot express their point of view, and they are sometimes silent. But if you want to change the society and express your point of view, you must be able to do that. I'm saying in my speeches, be part of the change, be the change, express your point of view. If you don't do that, if you stay silent, the radical left will win the debate. And a lot of people are doing that because they're afraid of the, speaking about something that is taboo today, like, the radical trans ideology. You need to have some courage and the courage of your conviction to express your point of view, because you'll be a minority. And maybe, yes, people will say you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're anti-trans. And it's not everybody that can support that. So we must allow that discussion, and it's not happening in our country. Actually, for me as a politician, I've been canceled and shadow banned on Twitter and Facebook, and it's still the case on Facebook. So that's why I'm doing that battle, and that's why we created that party based on 4 principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And all our policies are in line with these principles.
Excellent, excellent. Now, hate speech is a broad term, and the definition of it is difficult. But we also have compelled speech, where you can only say certain things like gender pronouns. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, and we had a new bill in Canada, the Bill C-16, and Jordan Peterson told us about that a couple of years ago, that if the federal government is going ahead with that bill, and if that bill is in force, that will be the beginning of compelled speech. And he was absolutely right. But that bill passed, and now it is part of our legislation. And you have, it started by asking people to use the right pronouns, but nobody can force me. If I have a biological man in front of me, having a discussion with me, and that biological male think that is a female, and if he wants me to call him a she instead of a he, I'm not obliged to do that. I have the right to say what I want, but no, with that legislation, it's against the law, and so you can be sued for that. The best example was Jordan Peterson. So yeah, and our position as a political party is to repeal that bill, Bill C-16. We don't need that in our country. If you are living in a real free country.
Yeah, and we've had a father in BC jailed over choosing to use the correct biological pronouns for his, I believe it was son, wanted to be a daughter. And that was horrible to see that people could be actually locked up for speech here in Canada. And what we ended up doing for you, Maxime, is we reached out to Twitter and all our groups, grabbing a bunch of questions, and Donald is going to be ready here with a question for you from his group, if you don't mind. Donald?
Yeah.
Donald, you're muted. 1 second, bud.
Okay,
you're good. You're good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Good morning, Max.
Good morning.
So, ideology and the agenda of the trans-industrial complex, I think that's what many people are calling it now. It's not an organic movement. I think we can realize that. But most people are in the dark. They think that the trans is just a man wearing a dress. They had no idea, even I had no idea, of the extent of the horrific sterilization and mutilation of vulnerable children and young people by that trans-industrial complex. All parties, including the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre, voted for Bill C-6 that criminalized parents who want to stop their children from cutting off their private parts. How do we ever get this far? How do we ever get where we are? One hospital in Montreal has done thousands of these surgeries for vulnerable people from Canada, the United States, and around the world, and they brag about it. And I just interviewed one of the victims last weekend, and he is in the process of seeking medical assistance in death because of what was done to him. And the PPC and you appear to be the only political party against there. But with only a few seats, what can you do in Parliament to stop this horrific activity?
So first, I must say, what can we do right now? Because, I'm not in Parliament. The goal is for me to be elected as soon as possible. It is why I'm running here in Portage-Lisgar in that by-election. The day of the election will be June 19, and it's going well. I hope I'll be elected. But if not, like I'm saying to people here in the riding, I'll be back at the next general election. But what we can do right now, we can speak, and that's what I'm doing. We are a minority, actually, but we can speak, and I believe that we'll be able to transform that to a majority of people that will look at it. That trans industry, like you said, or radical trans ideology, I call that a toxic ideology. It's everywhere. And it started by the idea of inclusion. Every politician in Ottawa wants to say everybody is included, and they pass that legislation. It's it was C6, but after that, after the election, that was the same legislation, but the legislation that passed in the House was C4, but that's the same thing of C6, just because we had an election and after that they tabled another bill, the same legislation. So that bill that is in force right now, it's C4, the same bill that you said, and they passed that and they were very happy. So that's that bill promote the trans industry. And yes, what they're doing to kids right now, I want to give you an example, a real example. I'm in the riding of Portage-Lisgar. I'm campaigning to be their MP. And, I was in a little town in the riding, and I did an event a week ago. And I was meeting people, and I met a lady, and she said, Maxime, I want you to meet my daughter. She's 13 years old. And so she came and I said, hello. And said, what's your name? She said, I'm Rebecca. Oh, okay, And we had a little discussion and she left. And after that, the mom told me, oh, Maxime, I'm so happy. I said, why? Because my daughter presented herself by her name, Rebecca. I said, is that her name? She said, yes. But at school, she said that she wanted to be called Mike, and everybody at school are calling her Mike. And when I knew that, I said, I don't want that. So she's confused, gender confused. And she was happy because she called herself Rebecca in front of me. But that's what is happening right now with that trans ideology. We are putting confusions in the mind of children where we had clarity, and it's happening. And if you look at the data, more with the young girl. So that's because of we are promoting the idea that a kid can transition, can become the other sex. If you're a girl and you're playing with truck, maybe you're a boy and you can transition. And we don't speak to the parents. She told me she knew that a couple of months after that, because somebody at school said, oh, his Mike is there when they try to call her daughter for a play game. And she said, what do you mean, Mike? Her name is Rebecca. So she had to go to see the principal of the school, and she said, I don't allow that. She's a Rebecca. And the principal said, no, that your daughters, or maybe she's a boy, she wants to be called Mike, and we'll do that. We'll respect that. And she said it's the last year, and I will homeschooling next year. So that's happening in a rural riding in Canada, not the downtown Toronto or downtown Vancouver. It's everywhere. So you're right. And after that, the second step is to give them hormones, and after that, surgeries. For me, I call that indoctrination, mutilation, sexualization of our children, with an ideology that is not based on science. There's only two sexes, and we must fight that, because in that bill, the bill C4, if you're a parent and you have a confused child with his or her gender, you don't have the right to try to speak to your child and tell him or her that she's or he is not born in a wrong body. Nobody is born in a wrong body. So you don't have the right to speak and tell your kids that you must accept your body. And also, if a therapist is doing that with you, that's illegal, and you can go to jail to up to 5 years. That's part of the C4. So they are promoting the transition of kids, but it's illegal if you try to tell to your kids that no, you must accept your body. And it's the society that we are in right now. So our proposal as a political party is to repeal that bill. That's what I said. But it's not politically correct to speak about that, to have that point of view in our society, because if you speak, they're going to say you're anti-trans and you're not inclusive and all that. Sorry about that BS. And we are doing that. And if more and more people are vocal about that, express their opinion, I believe that we'll be able to change and to win, because what we can do, our goal is to change the public opinion, because we know that establishment traditional politicians are doing politics based on survey and polling. So if they can see there's a majority that are saying enough is enough, we must go back to the reality, to the science. I believe that these politicians will say, okay, we want to be reelected, we'll look at the majority and we may change our position. But I can tell you, that's why I'm saying here in the riding during that electoral campaign, vote for the real conservative. The conservative are conservative only in name. They are fake conservative, and they all voted for that bill, and they were very happy to do that. So it's the trans ideology is very toxic, because at their base they want to deconstruct the family unit in our society, and we know that family is a basic of our society. And so that's their goal. They want to confuse children. You have also at school the drag queen story hour. It's not just because it's fun and it's fun for kids. No, they want to put in their minds that, look, you can be like that. You can transition. So I'm against all that. But the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre voted for that. And I believe it's so important to preserve our society. And that's why our slogan for this election is, a strong voice for your family. It's all about that. So, and I believe we can do something. The fact that we are speaking about it today, it's great. More and more people will understand what is happening. And when we'll change the public opinion, that will influence these traditional politicians. Actually, we did it together during COVID-19. When we started to say, every business is essential, we must reopen the economy in March 2020, we were a minority. But, we were able to do rallies across the country, and the freedom fighters spoke about freedom. And we had the Freedom Convoy. And at that time, we had a majority on our side. We were able to shift the public opinion on our side. And that's why at that time, you had Poilievre at the end of the Freedom Convoy said, freedom, freedom, freedom. So these politicians are doing politics by survey. So yes, if I'm in Ottawa, it will be easier to change that, because I will have the opportunity to do a press conference, to influence the mainstream media, to table legislation in the House. And I believe that we'll be able to win that battle faster. But if I don't win, I will still speak against that. And I believe that, we'll be able to change the public opinion and influence politics in Canada.
Let's now move forward to June 20th. You win. And what do you do on your first day? What's the first policy, private member bill? What's the first debate? What's the first press conference? What's the first thing you want to do if you win on June 20th?
Well, like I said, when I did my first press conference in the riding here in the beginning of the campaign, I said, if I win, I will table a private member bill, a bill on abortion, because I said I want to reopen the debate. And that bill is about late-term abortion. It must be illegal in Canada. I'm against late-term abortion. What that means that, after 6 months, you won't be able to have an abortion because it's a murder, because it's not my body, my choice. There's two bodies. You have a baby moving in your stomach, moving. And so if you do an abortion at that time, for me, it's a murder. And actually, in every European country, in every Western countries, they have legislation restricting abortion, and usually it starts at the second trimester. So I'm saying at the third one. Why at the third one? Because I believe that we can win that debate. I believe that a reasonable man will look at it and say, yeah, we must stop that. And I believe that we can have a win. And after that, we can have a discussion about maybe going further to the second trimester. But let's have a win, because in Canada, for the last 35 years, we have in our country about 100 late-term abortion. And only one, it's too much. But 100 late-term abortion every year in Canada for the last 35 years, we need to stop that. If you're pro-life, we need to stop that. So what I will do, I will table that bill. I will reopen the debate, because Polyev said, and it's very clear, actually he was in the riding last Friday. He did an event there, and he answered a question, and he said, Polyev government won't reopen the debate on abortion. And he said, I won't table any bill on abortion. I won't do that. So I won't reopen the debate. So Polyev is okay with, killing the onboard baby. He's okay with that. He doesn't want to reopen the debate. Why? Because he's pandering to the big cities, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, where pro-choice people are very active, and he wants to have their support. So he's taking for granted the support of a Westerner here in Manitoba, because, a conservative candidate will win with 60-70% of the vote. So maybe they won't be happy with his position. But, he said, my candidate may win by 50% of the vote, but my candidate will win. And I'm saying that to people in the riding. The Conservative Party of Canada is taking for granted your support. You must stop that. Send me to Ottawa. I will be a real conservative voice. I will vote with Polyev when he will have the courage to be a conservative. And if not, I will shame him. And like that, your important issues, like, reopening the debate on abortion, we will be able to have that discussion. Actually, they voted for a pro-life lady, Candidness Berger. She was the MP here in Portage-Lisgar. She's pro-life, but she didn't, nothing. The candidate here can speak about and saying that he's pro-life, but he won't be able to speak about that in Ottawa. He can say what he wants here in the riding, but Polyev said, I won't do anything on that. So he will have to follow the party line, and he will have to be silent when he'll be in Ottawa. So that's what I will do when I'll be elected. That's what I said to people in Portage-Lisgar, and that will be the first thing I will do when I'll be in Parliament.
And this is an important subject for me. My second child, we were living in Ontario at the time. A prenatal test confirmed that he was going to be born with Down syndrome. And the Ontario government really made it incredibly persuasive and easy to go ahead and abort him. We didn't, of course, but the procedure that we went through, it was very compelling, very convincing, and very persuasive to go ahead and give him end-of-life care before it started. My question to you, Maxime, is what are you going to do about gender selection and genetic selection for abortion? Can we tackle that one first?
Ah, absolutely. You know, sex selection abortion, I'm against that. I said that. And that is part of the bill, actually. Yeah, because if you want, when you know the sex, usually it's not in the beginning of the pregnancy. It's more a little bit later. So yes, I'm against sex selection abortion. It must be illegal in our country.
Merci beaucoup. We've got some questions out of Alberta, so I'm going to bring Joe up next for you.
Yes.
Good morning, Max. Thanks for taking the time out to speak to these issues directly.
Thank you.
The first thing I'd like to do is congratulate you for saying that you would publicly shame Pierre Poilievre if he were to crawl under a rock and not be conservative. That's wonderful to hear, because that's one thing we're not seeing in Ottawa is true calling into account people's behaviors. The biggest thing, and I made a very specific promise to an individual last night in a Twitter space that I held to gather questions for this. It's probably a very easy question, but I'll have a more pertinent and possibly a more provocative question. So I have two for you. The first one's a simple one. Sir, are you a Freemason or a member of the Freemasons?
No, I'm not.
Very good. Very good. Very straightforward answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next thing that I have is more so in concern with, as an elected member for the riding, to what degree would you use your ability to grow the party? Would this be a good conduit to grow the party? Because at this particular stage, as you know, we have 338 ridings. We're still looking for candidates for those ridings. But at the same time, just doing some simple math, needing between 10 and 20 people on every riding executive board is going to require, several thousand volunteers. How can we motivate participation in the party? And do you see having a seat in the House of Commons as a vehicle towards that event?
Yes and no. I believe that, if I'm winning that election, that will help us also to find candidates for the next election in every riding, because that is our goal. But don't forget, in the election in 2019 and 2021, we didn't have anybody in the House. We didn't have any candidate elected. And we were able to have 313 candidates at the last election, and about 320, if my memory is good, at the first election in 2019. So our goal is to have a candidate in every riding when the time of the election will come in 2025. But you're right by saying we want to build a riding association, and we need people, volunteers, on the board of the EDAs, the riding association. So what we are doing, it's a little bit different than the establishment political parties. We are building regional riding association. So one association may be in charge of 4 or 5 ridings. And like that, you concentrate your people in one riding association, and it's more effective because I'll give you an example. Like on the island of Montreal, over there, they're leftists. They're voting liberals all the time. It's very difficult for us to do well. So there's about 20 ridings on the island, but we'll have only one riding association. Our people will be together. They will be in charge of all these ridings on the island, and that's more effective for us. So that's our new functional model for a new political party. And yes, we are doing a call for candidates right now this year. I can tell you that we have about 100 candidates selected and approved for the next election. Our goal is to find another 101 this year, so we'll have 200. And next year we'll do the same, and we'll be ready for the next election. But the best way to try to have our candidates is to promote our platform. When people are looking that it's always the same platform, bold ideas based on principles without any compromise, and knowing that we will win. We have the best vision for this country based on Western civilization values. We will win, but we don't know when. But I strongly believe that this party will have one person elected. It can be at this by-election or later, and we'll start that common sense revolution. You look at the past. When we created the party in 2018, 0%, our first election 1.6, the last election 5, maybe at the next one we can have 10. But it took 28 years for the Green Party of Canada. They created the Green Party in Canada in the 1983 or something like that. After 28 years, they had their first candidate elected, Elizabeth May. I can tell you, it won't take 28 years, because for the Green Party of Canada, it took them 20 years to have more than 1.6% of the vote. We did that in our first election, 1.6% of the vote. And after 3 years, we had 5%. And the Green Party, after 30 some years, 35 years, they had at the last election 2%. So this party, step by step, is growing, and our time will come. So I believe that the best argument to find candidates is our platform. And I can tell you that the quality of our candidates is improving at every election. When we started the party in 2019, some people came and they tried to change our platform. We say, no, this is our platform. It won't change. You like it, come with us. You don't vote for us. And at the second election, we had a better quality of candidates. And I believe that will be the same. We are improving the quality of our candidates. And we have candidates that understand that they may not be elected. I'll give you an example. Before the last election, I did Zoom teleconference meetings with our candidates. And I told them, our goal is to have 4%. What I was telling them really was, you won't win. You can win. You cannot win an election with 4%. And we did well. We had 5%. But we were able to have 313 candidates dedicated, and they did a great campaign. And at the next election, maybe I'll say to our candidates, our goal is to have 10%. And maybe some candidates will win because of the competition in a riding. Some candidate will have more than 10%, some less. But, step by step. And our candidates are very dedicated, and they're here for the cause. They know that we're doing a revolution, a peaceful, common sense, populist revolution. And you cannot do that in 1 year.
Wonderful questions. To most people, a democracy dies at the party whip, and the whip whips it out of the MP. Can you let us know definitively, once and for all, are you going to have a whip? Do you have a whip? And do you intend to continue with that barbaric political process?
We won't need a whip, because what I said to our candidates, this is our platform. If you agree with the platform, come with us. Your goal will be to achieve that in Parliament, to vote in line with our platform. So I won't need a whip to do that. But also there's other issues that are not in the platform. And so that will be you're going to be free to bring other issues in Parliament, to have consultation with your people in your riding. And if there's an issue that is very important over there, you'll bring that. And we'll have more free vote. You'll be free to do that. I think it's very important to have a real democracy. But when, for example, we said that we will balance the budget in 1 year, so they must be able to vote for that. We said that we will repeal the Bill C4. They must be able to vote in line with that. But, there's a lot of other subjects that are not in our electoral platform, and they will be free to vote in line with their conscience or in line with the preoccupation of their people in their riding. Yes, so that's why we won't need a whip. Everybody understands that, the goal of the People's Party is to do these bold reforms. But when you're in Parliament, there's always, the news that are there, and there are new challenges that you have. and will respect the freedom of every PPC member of parliament to do what they want.
It sounds to me like you want to bring democracy back in its truest sense. So that's good news. I'm going to move to Ontario now with Azaria with a question.
Hey, good morning, Max. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you.
My question is around the current state of kind of integrity. And, I think that we're seeing, with David Johnston, sorry, I want to say the CPC, but sorry, the PRC, really peddling influence within Canada, and also the candidates from maybe our political parties seeking influence from special interest groups and corporations. What is it that your party is going to do, that you and your party are going to do to manage that integrity, to ensure that everybody's above board, nobody's doing kind of backroom deals, making these secret handshakes with other foreign entities or corporations or special interest groups?
Yeah, actually, that's why we are doing politics differently. We don't pander to any special interest group. We have strong policies and we'll do that. And because, we will have the credibility to do our reform. What I'm telling you today, I said that in 2019, in 2021, and I'll say the same thing at the next election. So we have the legitimacy to implement our reform. So you can have, special interest group that will come and say, Bernier, I don't want you to do that. That was in your platform. I don't know which policy, but that won't have any impact because we will have the legitimacy to implement our platform. And so we want also to have a smaller government in Ottawa. We're going to cut spending. Usually when you have these interest groups, they want to have, a part of the budget. They want to have some privileges and some grants or subsidies, but because we will cut the budget, balance the budget in 1 year, and with the surplus we will lower taxes. So we'll have a smaller government that won't interfere in provincial government. That will be very tough for special interest group to come and say, I want that privilege. For example, we will cut corporate welfare. So if a corporation has a lobbyist in Ottawa, they won't need that lobbyist anymore to lobby for a grant or a subsidies, because we won't give any money to any corporation. We will use that to, lower taxes to people and to corporation. So having a small government, usually it's more difficult to, as a special interest group, to influence the government. And, we have a code of ethics also in Parliament, and our members of Parliament will have to respect that. And we will be very, very strong. I look at the opposition in the 1980s with the Reform Party, when Preston Manning was the leader of the opposition. Preston was a principled politician, and that's us. I believe that the PPC is the older Reform. We are doing politics like Preston Manning, principled, and it will be what we will do and we'll be there. We won't change. Like Preston Manning didn't change when he was the leader of the opposition. He was not, asking for privilege for some of his MPs in a riding. No, everybody must be equal before the law. So for us, we'll have the legitimacy to do what we said, and we'll do it. That's it.
Preston Manning's from my riding, Yellowhead, and very, very supportive around here to those kind of principles as well. Alberta had a follow-up, so I'm going to go jumping back to Joe, and then I'm going to take you over to Quebec. I'm taking you all over the country here, Maxime. I hope you don't mind.
I like that. I don't have to travel.
C'est bon. Well, no, you're not vaxxed, so it's easier this way. Go ahead, Joe.
Max, my follow-up question is in relationship to the question that Jason asked you about party whips. In your answer, you stated that you would have a whip to collect the party platform votes. If a motion's on the floor that is specific to the platform, then that vote would be whipped. But conversely, if it is an independent, non-platform issue, it would be independently voted on by conscious, potentially, and hopefully constituency desirely led. So is that not, and this is a question from a follower of mine, is that not a form of doublespeak? You either will have a whip or you will not have a whip, was the basis of Jason's question. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that, Max.
No, I won't have a whip. I won't need a whip because our candidates are there because of our platform, and they all agree with our platform. So, and they incorporate welfare. They're in line with that. If you are a candidate of the People's Party, you must support the platform. If you don't be a candidate. So that's why I won't need a whip. When I will table a bill to end corporate welfare, I won't need to say to everybody, you must. They are speaking against that, like me, at every election. So that's why I won't need a whip, because that's, and also it's important to say our electoral platform didn't change and won't change. It's always the same one, contrary to the conservative liberals and all these establishment political parties. They have a different electoral platform before every election because they're doing polling and focus group, and they want to tell you what you want to hear. So they are not leading, they are following the public opinion. So we have always the same platform, and we know that maybe something is not popular today or that popular today, but the more we speak about that, the more it will become popular. So our people are in line with our principles. And so that's why I won't need a whip to tell them, oh, that's in our platform and you must vote for that. They will, and they will very happy to implement our platform.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much for the follow-up, Max.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to take you over to Quebec, and it's going to be anglais, not en français.
Good morning, Max. I'd like to say you do speak better in English than I do in French, so I appreciate to have the dialogue here. One question that I do really want to focus in on, like at the end of the day, everything is about the economy, right? And if we really take a look at all of these social issues that have been stemming, over the last few years, I believe that the main problem of these problems is with the education system, and again with the healthcare system, how they've kind of been subverted over like generations, right? To be able to push this, and these are the systems that the government is ultimately controlling, and then you have like your fiscal policies where the government is running these massive deficits, and then Chrystia Freeland did a video yesterday that they are blaming COVID and Putin for our economic woes. But the way I look at it, it wasn't Putin or COVID that shut down the country. It was the government. It was the Bank of Canada that really funded all of this, and then they're funding everything that we're seeing now. With this trans movement and all these social issues. So really, what I want to know is, what is your take on the Bank of Canada as well as the government and their relationship, and how would you see perhaps separating that or eliminating that connection by abolishing the so-called central bank, not even auditing, but completely abolishing it? Because I truly believe that a vast majority of our problems are due to the monetary corruption inherent in our society. So how do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, so I will start with the deficit, and you're right by saying that because of the government during COVID-19 and the official opposition, the conservative, they said during COVID-19 that virus is deadly for the majority of the Canadians and we must shut down the economy, you must stay at home, but we will give you money, we'll create new government programs and will help you. So I was the only one to say the economy must be reopened, every business is essential, and we must protect the most vulnerable, and that virus is not deadly for the majority of the population, only for older people with comorbidities. So that being said, Trudeau, with the opposition, with the Conservative Party, they voted that deficit and they voted for these programs at that time. So they created that huge deficit. And we didn't have the money for that. So what happened? It's the the Bank of Canada printed all that money out of thin air to buy our Canadian bonds. And as you know, when you have more money in circulation and fewer goods and services, you have inflation. And now we are paying right now for these deficits. We are paying because the inflation is there about around 4 or 5%, and I believe that the inflation will be there for the next couple of years. So that being said, we have that because the Bank of Canada was the ATM machine, and the Bank of Canada financed the federal government for these programs. So Poilievre can speak, we need to control inflation, but the way to do that is to have an agreement with the Bank of Canada. You're saying that we must abolish the Bank of Canada. It's not the proposal of our political party. What we're saying, we must say to these bureaucrats in the Bank of Canada, these civil servants and the politician in Ottawa, that the Bank of Canada must have a zero inflation target. Like that, they won't be able to create money out of thin air. They won't be able to create inflation. And now, as you know, the Bank of Canada has an inflation target of 2% every year. And 2% every year for the last 10 years, we had 25% inflation. Now, we have 4 or 5% inflation, but for sure, for the next 10 years altogether, we'll have 25% minimum inflation. So inflation is a tax. We must stop that. But Poilievre said that, he will freeze the budget. He won't cut the budget. Before COVID and after COVID, if you look at our national budget in Ottawa, the budget grew by $90 billion. But Poilievre won't cut that. He will keep the budget like that. He will cut liberal spending and replace that by conservative spending. He won't balance the budget. And that being said, the Bank of Canada would create money out of thin air, would create inflation. And he said also that he is okay with the 2% inflation target that we are telling the Bank of Canada to have. So, I'm against that. If you want to control inflation, there's two major things that you must do. The first one is to balance your budget. Like that, the Bank of Canada won't have to buy Canadian bonds and print money out of thin air. Balance the budget as soon as possible. We'll do that the first year. And after that, telling the Bank of Canada, you have a zero inflation target. And we may have a discussion about the future of the Bank of Canada, but I believe that if you do these two things, you won't have inflation. But I know that our system is based on a fiat currency. As you may know, I'm for a gold standard. And with a gold standard, you won't need a central bank. But the way to go there will be a little bit longer. We can do that reform right now about the zero inflation target. That's why it's a proposal that we have, and we'll see what will happen. But I believe that the best monetary system will be a system based on the gold standard. I understand that other countries like the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, are looking to create a new currency based on gold. We'll know that. They will have their meeting this summer. So we'll see about that. That would be a competition to the US dollar. And it's very sad that the Bank of Canada didn't have any gold reserve. We are the only Western central banks that doesn't have any gold reserve. And all these other central banks right now, they are buying gold. They are buying gold because they know that we may have a new reserve money or a competition to the US dollar. And that may be based on gold. And that's why they're buying gold. So I believe that, we'll have a big problem in Canada when all that will happen because of the Bank of Canada didn't have any gold reserve. So let's fix with the 0% target. And after that, I hope that the Bank of Canada will start to buy gold for being sure that our dollar will be able to stay strong when all these international development will happen.
So you mentioned that, so he mentioned that, inflation is running at around 4%, 5%. So let's be honest, it's probably closer to 10, because we know that the way that they calculate, inflation is to try to underreport it. So if they're saying 4 or 5, it's probably closer to 10. And I'm looking at the Canadian 10-year bond yield right now, and it's printing at about 3.4%. So if we have an interest rate of 3.4% and an inflation rate of, even if we take them at face value and call it 5, right? Our interest rate is still lower than a rate of inflation, even government reported inflation. So in order for us to really bring down this inflationary expansion through the system, is to increase the interest rate to at least the same level of what the inflation rate is, or if not more. Because a lot of people, they want to point to the government for spending all of this money, but in reality, like if you look at it, the government is nothing but like a degenerate drunk at an open bar, and it's the Bank of Canada that's pouring all the booze. So of course they're gonna get loaded and then cause a ruckus, and so that's really what we've seen. So I think that the only way to really rein in these massive deficit spending is through the control of interest rates, because right now they're artificially suppressed. Like, who would want to really own a bond that pays less than the average rate of inflation? Like, it's a guaranteed loser. It makes no sense. So if the free market was really allowed to exert itself into the bond market, we'd have a much higher rate of interest. But through debt monetization and by basically allowing the bank to monetize government debt, we're in this problem. So in terms of the central bank and interest rates, and we saw a 25 basis point yesterday through the Bank of Canada, like, it has to go much higher, but this is ultimately going to cause a deflationary collapse. You're going to see the real estate market collapse. You're going to see the stock market collapse. You're going to see a massive amount of job loss. And, ultimately that's what's going to have to happen, because, we have never really solve the issues of this inflationary expansion going back all the way to 2000, right? All we do is cut interest rates and inflate, cut interest rates and inflate, to a point we created such a massive bubble in our economy that the only way out of it is a hyperinflationary collapse like Venezuela, or a deflationary crisis where it crashes all assets. So I want your views on that, and really what we have to do, because we have some major systemic issues when it comes to monetary policy and fiscal policy here, and I think that we really need to address this.
You have a point there. When I was speaking about inflation, I was speaking about the official inflation rate. But you're right. If you do your grocery, and Canadians understand that the inflation is not at 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 or 5%. They know that it must be 8, 10, like you said, because the way that they are calculating inflation does not represent the reality of today. You're absolutely right about that. And yes, you're right that the Bank of Canada is in a losing position. They cannot win. Actually, when in the 1980s, when we had inflation at that time, the inflation was officially around 10%. And to fight inflation, central bankers in US and in Canada had to raise interest rate to 18 and 20%. And you're right. Now, the fact that they're raising interest rate to fight inflation, they will have to raise interest rate more than what they're doing. And that's why I'm saying the Bank of Canada is in a losing position, because doing that, you're absolutely right. The Bank of Canada will kill the economy, will be in a recession. And so if they do nothing, the inflation will go up, and we'll have that inflation for the next couple of years, and everybody will be poor. So everybody must understand we are in that position because of bad fiscal and monetary policies. Fiscal and monetary policies. We need to fix that. That's why fiscally balance the budget, and the monetary policy. The Bank of Canada must be serious. If we want to fight inflation, they will need to raise interest rate more than what they did this week. And by doing that, it will be a tough time for everybody. So that's why central bankers are not telling the truth right now to Canadians about the inflation, and they don't want to take the responsibility of the failure, not only the bank but also the government. And Poliev won't speak about that also. He's saying that the Bank of Canada must lower interest rate. I think he said that this week, must stop to raise interest rate. That means he is for inflation. So you must be serious. You want to fight inflation, do what you need. But by raising interest rate also, that will be a fiscal, budgetary challenge for the government of Canada. The interest that we are paying for our debt every year is about $24 billion a year. And I just want to let you know that the budget of the National Defense this year in Canada, the Department of National Defense, is $25 billion. So we are throwing through the window $24 billion. That's the budget of the National Defense. But now with the interest rate that are raising, next year, the interest of our debt will be around $35 billion. So we cannot afford that. We need to be serious and cut spending. We are in a very difficult situation. That's why I believe that we'll be in a recession or something will happen. But we need to remember it's because of bad policies. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and now we are paying for that.
We're talking about Bank of Canada printing money. We're talking about, for example, people say money doesn't grow on trees, but it used to be made from trees. And there's people headed towards digital. What's your take on digital currency, centralization of that, and having the Bank of Canada in charge of currency via digital?
Yeah, I'm against that. It must not happen because it's a way to control people. The most important of that is our privacy. Actually, what is a central bank digital currency? Just to be clear with everybody, when you go to the grocery or you go to a restaurant today, you can pay with your debit card or your credit card or with cash. If you pay with your debit card or your credit card, and tonight you go on the website of your bank and you look at your bank account, you can see all the transactions that you did during the day with your debit card or with your credit card. You have all that. That information, these data are private data, private information between you and your banker. Your banker does not have the right to sell that information, that every Monday you're going to Costco or every Thursday you're going to Walmart. So they don't have the right. It's a private information. What will happen when we'll have a central bank digital currency? What will happen? Actually, it will be easy. The federal government will tell you, we have a new program and new subsidies. And if you want to have that money, you need to register with the central bank. And the money will come from the central bank. So what will happen? All the information between you and your banker will be now between you and the central banker, between you and these bureaucrats. They will know all the transaction that you are doing. Like actually right now, your banker knows everything that you're doing, but the central banker will know, the bureaucrats will know, and the politician will know. So that's goodbye to your privacy, and they can use that information to control your behavior, saying, this month you spend a lot of gas and, we must fight climate change. So next month you won't be able to use your debit card or your credit card to buy gas. So that can happen. But if you tell me, Maxime, no, that won't happen. Actually, in the 2022 budget, the Trudeau government gave $17 million to the finance department and to the Bank of Canada over 3 years to look at the central bank digital currency and to work on a bill that will be tabled in the House. So what I'm telling you, in 2025, the Trudeau government may come with a bill that will put forward the idea of a central bank digital currency. We must fight that if we want to keep our privacy. But what they're saying to us, it would be more efficient. It would be more efficient. No, we don't need that. The system right now is very efficient, and we don't need that. That's only a way to control us, to control our behavior. And we are the only national party that is against that.
Yeah, we saw what happened with the convoy truckers and the freezing of the bank accounts. Can you imagine if the government didn't have to go through the banks to get that done?
Yeah.
It would be just a button push. It would be incredible. Max, we have a few more questions for you. If you don't mind, maybe we can steal like 10, 15 minutes out of you to get through them all, because we got a lot of good questions for you. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Kevin quickly, then we'll go to Donald, and then to our chat. Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of like CBDC, are always sold as convenience, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And it sounds like, if you take a look at it, it sounds like it's an attempt to nationalize the banking system, right? So you put all your five big banks. We don't really have that many in Canada, and then they're all ultimately going to be answering to a central bank, which is nationalization. But to get away from that, you mentioned something about fiscal responsibility, right? Like you feel that that's important, and as everybody should. And one thing I want to point out is when Elon Musk took over Twitter, and 70 or 80% of the employees ultimately left, and Twitter didn't really change that much. So if we take that look into government, like if we eliminated 70 or 80% of our government employees, because right now I think the federal government is one of the largest employers in Canada, and that's absolutely atrocious. So like, by eliminating 80% of the government, it would probably run more efficiently. It would definitely be easier to balance the books and be fiscally responsible. And I don't really think anybody would really notice, 8 out of 10 government employees disappearing overnight. So what are your views on that?
Yeah, you have a point. And I must say, to balance the budget, our proposal is, cut corporate welfare. You can save $8 billion there. Cut foreign aid. We know we are giving money to African countries to fight climate change. So, we don't need that. We need to help countries when there's maybe a humanitarian disaster. But let's cut that. We can save $5 billion. Let's cut the CBC. We can save $1.2 billion. And for the UN, the federal government is giving a lot of money to the UN. What I'm saying to the UN, the UN is a dysfunctional organization, a socialist organization, and we will give as a country money to the UN when they will promote our values. And because they're not doing that, so I believe that we can save $1 or $2 billion there also. So there's a way to balance the budget, but also the civil servant. Only in the health department in Ottawa, there's about 20,000 civil servants there, 20,000 of them. And Ottawa did not manage any hospital. So you can cut a lot of civil servants over there. Yes, let's have that discussion, and that's our role. We want a smaller government in Ottawa that won't interfere in provincial jurisdiction and won't interfere in your day-to-day life. So yes, it's something that we can do, absolutely. And by the way, Jean Chrétien did it. He was able to manage the budget and balance the budget because he had in front of him in the House Preston Manning asking all the time to balance the budget. And when Preston Manning started to speak about that, that was not popular. He didn't have the majority on his side. But because Preston Manning was a principled politician, he was able to speak about it and explain to the population. And he was able to educate the population about that and the importance of being fiscally responsible. And, after a couple of months, he had the majority on his side. And Chrétien and Martin did a poll, and they saw that the majority of Canadians were in favor of balancing the budget. So they did it by cutting civil servant and also cutting other expenses.
I'm hearing a common theme here, principled politician. I'm catching that. Donald, go ahead.
Max, great to hear you talking about foreign aid. And as you know, foreign aid and Canadian sovereignty are now linked. we're giving away our Canadian sovereignty, signing all these global agreements, funding it with Canadians' tax dollars, World Health Organization, UN, all those African projects, even World Economic Forum projects are funded with Canadian tax dollars. And we've handed billions and billions out. And back home, people are suffering. Hospitals are shutting down. Hundreds of our small communities lack safe drinking water. How much do you really think that we can stop handing out foreign aid? I mean, what percentage of foreign aid do you think we can stop?
Oh, at least 80% of that. The only way we will give money to other countries, it will be under two conditions. The first one, there's a humanitarian crisis in a country, and yes, Canadians are, generous, and we will help. Or an environmental disaster, we can be there. But look at all these other programs, and yes, we will cut that. We are not in the business of building a nation across the world. So we can save a lot. I must say like that, at least 80%.
That's a great start for sure. At least 80%. Get Canada focused on building a good foundation here before we help our neighbors. Your home needs to be taken care of before you can help your community.
Absolutely.
I think that's the message. So Maxime, I know we're at time, but I do have some chat questions from the actual audience during your chat. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take you through them.
Yeah.
So abortion and all other legal murders by gov policies is connected as one concern. A decent society must have a moral foundation, respect for life, protecting children from harm, and domestic values. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. And, I must add the assisted suicide in Canada. It's now, everybody can have it, can do it. And we are promoting that. We are promoting the cult of death. That must stop. And actually, right now, if you're depressed, they're going to say, oh, we can kill you. If you're poor, we can kill you. That was supposed to be only at the end of life. And that was supposed only to be when a patient will ask for it. Now, doctors and nurses are promoting that. That must be criminal. That must be illegal. And that's why we want to promote life by tabling that legislation on abortion and by, ending the assisted suicide that is open for everybody. We must stop that.
Absolutely. And Trudeau waived the 10-day waiting period recently for maids as well. So that's concerning. Yeah. I'm not sure why we needed to do that, but he did. Yeah. Ellen asked, do you have an answer for putting measures in place to protect the people from a rogue PM?
It's we have a great constitution. We have a charter of rights, but we have politicians who don't follow our constitution. So what we need to do is to replace them by principled, I will add that again, principled politician that will fight for you and respect the constitution. So we'll have a general election in 2 years, and that would be the time to vote Trudeau out.
And we have another one here. Thank you very much for that answer, Maxime. Peter wanted to know, can you help us withdraw from socialist international organizations so we can decide on our own fate in our own Canadian soil without foreign meddling? Godspeed. And as an example, the reduction in nitrogen, 30% reduction, I contacted the government of Canada, scientists there, they couldn't explain why this magic number. So clearly we are taking the orders from above and down. So what would you do when it comes to things like guidance or global influence? Would you just follow it, or would you actually have Canada look into it?
We won't be part of that. We are the People's Party for the people, and we are fighting for the sovereignty of our country. So we will withdraw from, for example, the Paris Accord. So that being said, because we will withdraw from that accord, like President Trump did when he was president. He said, I'm not part of that anymore. So we have these regulations that are imposed on our farmers because we signed the Paris Accord. And Trudeau and Poilievre, they agree with that. Poilievre believe in the Paris Accord. Actually, he voted in 2017 for the Paris Accord. And at that time, I was a conservative member of parliament, and I was the only one who didn't vote for that motion. And Polyev and all the conservatives voted for the Paris Accord. And Polyev right now, today, said that he will fight climate change, but he won't impose any carbon tax. I respect that. But he will impose more regulations on farmers and businesses to be able to achieve the Paris Accord goals. And so that's why, we'll have more regulation. And at the same time, he will also take some of our money, our taxes, and give subsidies to the green industry. So we won't do that. We won't be part of the Paris Accord. And we are a sovereign country. We can do it, and we will. That's a big difference with us and the conservative and all these establishment political parties, because we believe that there's no climate emergency and the climate will always change. And that being said, on the environment, same thing also with the UN. Polyev and Trudeau are okay with the migration compact. What is the migration compact? The UN said to every country, you must open your borders, migration must be normal, a citizen of South Africa must be able to be a citizen of Canada. I'm saying no to that. To be a Canadian is a privilege, and we will withdraw from that treaty. But Polyev and the Liberals will be part of that, and that's why we have mass immigration. Polyev won't do anything about mass immigration. We will stop that. We'll have sustainable immigration. So I'm giving you example that we won't participate in the globalist agenda, and we are the only political party who will do that.
That's a good news. I'm seeing a lot of questions around accountability, and Ellen brought one up for this. How would you ensure that a deal like Singh and Trudeau does not render a minority government unaccountable?
I don't know to say the question. How, what?
So the deal between the NDP and the Liberal are blocking a no confidence vote. How would you kind of help that in the future?
Okay, yeah, we cannot do anything against that. It's part of our parliamentary system. You can have a coalition that's legal, that's constitutional, and that's not the first time. We had a coalition government in British Columbia. We had a coalition government in other provinces. That is happening. We cannot stop that. It's part of our constitution. What I'm telling people, at the next general election, PPC candidate elected at the next general election, we will support Polyev when he will be a real conservative, when he will have the courage to act like a real conservative. So we can be, after the next general election, like the NDP, but the NDP of the right, pushing Polyev in the right direction. That's what we can do. We will support him when he'll be a conservative, and we will shame him when he won't be. So, and we won't need to have a coalition for that. That's what I'm saying to voters, and that's the position of the party. But that coalition is a legal constitution. It is part of our legal deal with the NDP and the Liberal, and it is in our constitution. You can have a coalition government, and that's a fact. But I believe that we must change the electoral system to put more proportionality in our system. Our system is not the best one, but it's a good electoral system, and our proposal is to put more proportionality. I'm not saying that we had 5% of the vote, and so we must have 5% of the MPs in the House, maybe 1% or 2%, and I believe that we must improve our system by doing that.
That's a nice start. One idea that's been floating around is a citizen-based initiated no confidence. We have the MP-based one. You can keep that. But what about a citizen-based one where we could trigger one if enough support is there?
Yeah, that's something that they have in BC. That's a nice proposal. Yes, you can, decided to have a referendum in your riding if you think that your MP is not representing your view. So we call that the recall legislation. You can recall your MP. That's something that it's a great proposal. we are looking at it right now to this. We'll decide if we implement that in our platform, but it's something that can help for sure.
Great, great. I have just a few more questions, so I'm just going to hold you for a bit more, if you don't mind there, Maxime. We have one from Clash in Canada. I'd like to see if you can do anything about the government wanting COVID payments back from small businesses when the country is dishing out monies to other countries unnecessarily. And in addition to that, there's at least 1 million Canadians that had the COVID money clawed back from them. What's your take on that?
But first, I think that was a mistake to give money to businesses and individuals during COVID-19 because they shut down the economy. And my position is, that was a big mistake. Just they did the right thing, and that's why we are paying for that. But we must stop. We must stop all the COVID subsidies. And what I want instead is all the vaccine injuries, and we need to people who decided to take the vaccine with all the pressure that they have, and they have an injury because of that, they must receive compensation from the federal government, and that would be important.
Excellent, excellent. And we have one more question here. Let me just pull it up. Zahena from Manitoba has asked, would you support amending the Emergencies Act to require a unanimous vote to invoke? I believe if it's a true emergency, it would be unanimous. If Parliament can't agree, it's not an emergency. Comments?
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't have an emergency during the Freedom Convoy. That was political repression, as you know. And I was there. I saw that. I always fought for freedom and freedom of choice and informed consent since the beginning of that pandemic or COVID hysteria. And yes, we must change the Emergency Act to be sure that when they're going to use it, it will be an emergency first. And second, yes, if it's an emergency, I agree with you. Maybe not the unanimity, but maybe a super majority or something like that. That's a good idea.
And on the emergency topic, Soros perfected the art of creating chaos. When government controls emergency, protocols of pandemics, fire, food, energy, economy, it's over. How can we stop the foreign interference of WEF China?
By electing the right politician. We have foreign interference right now because our politicians are in agreement with that socialist ideology and they're globalists. So nobody will impose something on us. We are a sovereign country. The UN doesn't have an army. The World Economic Forum doesn't have an army. Trudeau and these establishment politicians are in line with that philosophy. And Trudeau is putting in place legislations that are, following the World Economic Forum philosophy. So we need to elect the right people. And the best example is Danielle Smith. When she was elected, when she was elected the leader of the party and prime minister, she said, I don't want my civil servant to deal anymore with the World Health Organization. And that was it. So we can do that, and we must regain our sovereignty by doing it, and we will. That's why the People's Party is the only party that is not globalist. We believe in our country and our sovereignty.
And that's good news, very good news. And then now when it comes to your candidates, John has a question around that. Since 2021, what steps have the PPC taken to make their candidate nomination process more fair and transparent?
Yeah, I think that's what we're doing right now when we are asking for a call for candidates. If we have two candidates in the same riding, we'll have a nomination. If we have only one, we have a process. They are doing an interview. We're doing a background check of them when we approve candidate. And if we approve more than one in a riding, because they're following the criteria, we'll have a nomination contest. And that's part of the democracy in our party.
That's an excellent question too. So Max, you're getting a lot of support from the chat, by the way. They really like the fact that you're just answering questions without, we didn't give you any of these questions ahead of time because we just created them on the fly here. So thank you for that. Edge of Thought, one of the last questions here, wants to know, what are some of the books that you've recently read and you would recommend?
Yes. I didn't have time to read a book recently, but I can tell you what I'm reading right now. It's I'm reading studies in the Mises Institute. That's a great website, mises.org. They are always great studies. And but the last book was which one was? That was the Economy 101 in Mises Institute. It's all the myth surrounding the economy. You can find that book on mises.org. That's a good, very easy to read. And, you know, because I have to explain the economy to people. So I've read that book a couple of times, and I read it again a couple of months ago, just to have the best argument in mind.
Wonderful. Thank you, Max. We're just going to go to the panel quickly for the last thoughts and maybe a last question. We'll go with Kevin.
Yeah, so in terms of the way our country is run right now, like everybody's talking about Trudeau, but the way I see it, the way I think that it works is the most powerful person is the person that holds balance of power. So right now you have the NDP, they're holding the balance of power, and it's really their coalition that has stopped an election from being triggered. And, you know, with CSIS, they're saying that they have evidence that, you know, there's corruption in all parties going back to, like, you know, 3 or 4 decades. So, like, what are your thoughts on voter influence from foreign entities? Like, how can we stop that? Because I think that's a major threat to our and if Jagmeet Singh is really interested in getting to the bottom of this, then how come he hasn't triggered a non-confidence vote and forced an election and let the people really tell the government what they want, instead of doing all of these pointless inquiries, and where ultimately at the end of the day, they just come back and say, we investigated ourselves, nothing was wrong, but we're going to create another committee to make and give ourselves more power to make sure it never happens again. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's really frustrating to me, that they never let the people talk. They always investigate themselves, and it always comes up with the same answer.
Yeah, but you must ask Jagmeet Singh why he's supporting Trudeau on that. He will have to answer that. But what we can do, I believe that we can look at the legislation that Australia put in place a couple of years ago to fight that. I believe that, you know, we must use all that information and legislation and implement that in our parliamentary system here in Canada. That would be a good start. But the Chinese influence in Canada, it's not only about the election. It's everywhere in universities. You know, I'll give you an example. In Alberta, in one university, I won't name, they had a board meeting and they had a discussion about, you know, doing a research on the entrance of China in Canada in our institution. And they had a debate about that at their board meeting. But the dean of the university said, no, we won't do that. And the reason why, because they received funding from the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party. So that must stop. Yes, there's a lot of things that we can do to be sure that the Chinese Communist Party won't have an influence. You have also Chinese police station in Montreal and Vancouver. That's illegal, that's unconstitutional, and that's against the International Convention. We must dismantle that. So there's a lot that we can do. And we will look at what Australia did, and I believe that would be successful.
Well, I did notice on your donation page that it's in Canadian funds. There's no yuan on there as an option. So that's a good sign. Don, we're going to go to you for another comment or question. Okay, we'll unmute you. There you go, bud.
Okay. I've lately become very optimistic about this big wave of change. You must see it, Max. There's a big shift in the wind. People of all political stripes are waking up to reality. And it seems to me that the PPC is the natural home for these people. I think we're going to see great growth in the party, just ordinary people.
I believe so. I believe so. Our time will come. And I believe in politics, people appreciate, you know, truthful politicians, and the coherence. Look at since the creation of the party and sometime before that, what I'm saying today, I said that a couple of years ago. So I won't change. And I believe people appreciate that. And the populist movement in Europe is growing. And I believe that it will be the same in Canada. I just want to correct something when I spoke about the book. The title of the book is Economic in One Lesson. Economic in One Lesson. That's the book that I've read again a couple of months ago. But thanks for asking that question. I believe that we have a great future. We just need to be out there and speak about our principles. And that's why I'm very pleased that you gave me the opportunity to speak about our platform and the party.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Maxime. One last question from the panel, and then we'll be able to wrap up. Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks so much, Jason. Again, thank you again, Max, for what you're doing here this morning. What I'd like to do is perhaps throw a human element into this. Many people can acknowledge that what you have done the last 5 years with the PPC, the people that have come together to support you, from founding members to recent members that have joined perhaps last night, that's the known support that you've got. It's been growing exponentially, and we're seeing that. What I'd like to do is take a moment to thank the unknown supporters, the ones that we forget support you, and I'd like to call them out. So please express to your family, your friends, your close supporters, our gratitude and our thanks for the support that they've given you throughout your career, as well as the continued and concise support in the formulation and the advancement of the party for the last 5 years. This form of sacrifice for Canada needs to be acknowledged, and to say thank you all for standing on guard for Canada. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, I want to thank you also. And yes, you are right. This party, my opponent like to say it's a one-man show. Yes, you are seeing me and the face of the party, but because the media won't cover our candidates and our organization, we have coordinators all across the country that are helping to build the party. But and we have great candidates that we approve, but they won't give them visibility. But yes, this party is a grassroots party. We have a lot of people all across the country. And as you know, we had 840,000 people who voted for us at the last election. And if every one of these voters can find 10 more supporters, and I believe before the next election, and they may have 2 years to do that, and it's doable, we're going to be at 8 million votes. And that's why I believe that our ideas will win. We have more and more support. And I want to thank all our supporters, our candidates, our organizations across the country. The PPC is because of them, is there because of them.
Well, you demonstrated today there, Maxime, that you are reachable. People can talk to you. You're not afraid of questions. You took all the hard ones too. You didn't say no comment, no thanks to a single one of them. And when I'm reading through the comments here, people are very impressed with a few things: your truth and honesty, and also your accent. They said it's gotten much, much better for English.
Thank you. I'm working on that. Actually, I have 2 daughters, Charlotte and Megan, 21 and 24 years old. And we decided they went to an English school, so they don't have any accent in English. They're perfectly bilingual, but they have an accent in French, and I'm okay with that.
Très bien, monsieur. Très bien. And so in closing here, Clash of Canada in Canada has asked how to contact you, how to reach out to you. I know how, but let's go ahead and let everybody know how to reach out to you.
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter, Maxime Bernier. They can follow me on Facebook and all the social media, Instagram. They can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. They can read our platform. They click on platform. They have all the ideas out there. I can tell you, if you try to find the electoral platform of Pierre Poilievre, you won't see that on his website. They don't have a platform right now because they have to do polling and focus group. But we have the same platform since the creation of that party, People's Party of Canada.ca. And if you want to help me as a candidate in this riding, Portage-Lisgar, you can go on the website, votemaxbernier.ca, votemaxbernier.ca. and you'll be able to do donation and to help me because we have to pay for our ads, and we are doing that war here in Portage-Lisgar, and I believe that I can win this riding. And I said to people here, if I don't win, I'll be back at the general election. So we are building something in the riding here, and they can help. So they can be in touch with us. They can send us an email at info@peoplespartyofcanada.ca. It may take 3 days to answer your email. We have a small team in Ottawa, but be patient. We'll be with you.
That's wonderful. And to let everybody know, I will be heading to Manitoba to cover the election. I'm the only person that I know that's going there so far, and the CPC won't respond to my questions. Maxime, can I count on you that when I get there, I can have another interview with you and see how things are going on?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I'm campaigning it full time. I'll be there the day of the election and the day after the election. And if I win, my wife would be with me, and we'll look for a place to stay. That's a challenging time. That's a fun time. And yes, I'd be pleased to do another interview with you here in Portage-Lisgar.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Would you like to have any closing comments for Canada before you say goodbye?
Yeah, I'm saying to everybody, stay strong and free, and believe in yourself, believe in your principles, be proud, speak about what you believe. Don't be shy, express your point of view, and that's the way that we will grow and we'll be able together to change this country for better. So thank you, everyone. Stay strong and free.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. It's over.
Merci. Bye-bye.
Well, there we are, folks. Maxime, unfiltered, unfettered, completely honest, truthful. He even made a correction when he believed he made a mistake about a title of a book. We were able to follow up on what seemed like maybe doublespeak around whether or not he would have a whip. He clarified that. I'd like to bring my guests and the panels back in. If you guys want to go ahead and give me your thoughts on how that went. Did you get all the questions you were looking for? And what did you think about your answers? Let me go start with Don. Oh, once again, we got the mute. I'll get that for you, Don. There you go, bud.
Just fantastic. So pleased. And he brought up a number of things that I hadn't thought of, but when he brings them up, they're tremendously important. He's the only leader that's talking about compensation for vaccine injuries and deaths. He's the only leader. And his position on foreign aid and Canadian sovereignty, very impressive. Nobody else has that. And the linking of foreign aid with Canadian sovereignty, 80%. Can you imagine how much that would do for Canadians if we stopped giving away 80% of our current foreign aid levels?
And Kev, you didn't let him get away with anything when it came to the financial part of Canada. What were your thoughts on his comments?
No, I like what he had to say, and I also know that he was following a certain guidelines. Wasn't really able to get into what because let's be honest, I know Max. I know he's an Austrian economist. I've been following him since 2015, and I know his views. I think there's still some things that he wasn't able to say that he wanted to say. So I really do want to have another opportunity to press him on this, because I think this is the primary issue in Canada. It is the two entities, the one entity that is controlling fiscal policy and the other entity that is controlling the monetary policy. And I think that we put a lot of heat on, with the protesters, going into Ottawa and setting up shop, but nobody was setting up shop and protesting the Bank of Canada. So I really want to go into more detail about that. And I really want to get more answers for Canadians on that, because until we eliminate the Bank of Canada, until we remove the power of the bankers to control the issuing power of currency, first through inflation, which we're seeing, and then through deflation, which is inevitable, ultimately what's going to happen is the bankers and the corporations that orbit them, right? They're going to rob everybody of all property until we wake up homeless on the continent that our forefathers conquered. So I believe that the issuing power of currency must be taken away from the bankers. I believe it must be restored to the people to whom it properly belongs, because if we don't do that, the saying, you will own nothing and be happy. This is what the central banking system is designed to do. It's designed to enslave society. So we really, really need to have more focus on this conversation, because until we eliminate the power of the bankers, we will continue to work and live under their corrupt criminal system.
Well, I think that would be an excellent interview to have if we can orchestrate that particular topic. Maybe, hold on a second, we got some keywords now. If we have any questions ready for that particular topic, I would let him know ahead of time so that he can be prepared with good answers on that one. So maybe that's something we can work together on, Kev, to try and get going. Joe, what was your take on, did you get all your questions answered? Did you like your answers? What was your take on that?
I would say a majority of the questions that had been formulated over the last 12 hours have been answered. A few more as well. I think he alluded to an awful lot of situations, and you had a great wrap up there, Donald. And Kevin, you have a bone. You're chewing on it. You're not going to let that bone go and stay on it, man. That's some good line of questioning you want to bring up. The thing that I noticed was his very final comment answered one unasked question that I had last night. If Max were successful on the evening of the 19th, the morning of the 20th, would he commit to residing and living in the riding to represent the riding as a constituent within his own riding?
Mm-hmm.
When he stated that Mrs. Bernier will be there with him on the 19th, and the next day will be looking for a place to live. Wow, that answered that question very clearly. So good on Max. So this was absolutely fantastic. I think it's done a great deal of benefit, given Canadians a clear and concise understanding of Max's positions, and also a deeper understanding of how the party is progressing. His comment about having 338 ridings, we're going to a system of amalgamating regional ridings. Take, for instance, the YEG area, Edmonton. We have 11 ridings, my friends, but we have one riding association, the Amalgamated Riding Association. You can find out more about that riding association by going to ppcyeg.ca. Thanks so much, Jason. This has been a fantastic show. I just am going to be amazed at the replays and the reviews. So everybody out there, give it a pound, like it, share it, send it to your friends, text it to people. Let's get Max's message out to people. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Joe, for that as well. And yeah, I'm going to remind everybody to go ahead and subscribe. Now that I have you all here, subscribe and show a little bit of love to the show. And I also want to remind everybody that we are live streaming on Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, here on YouTube, and LinkedIn. So no matter what, wherever you are, whatever platform you are, wherever your friends are, share, 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 share. We are going to have more shows like this. I can let you know that we have a senator coming on. We have an ex-Conservative Party MP coming on. We have some more reporters coming on. We got lots of stuff coming up for you. So go ahead and subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. I want to say thank you very much to my panel. Azario had to leave. We had Zach had to leave. But thank you all very much for the questions. All of you reached out to your networks and brought Canadians' voices in. You brought the information in. You got the questions asked. And Canada, thank you so much for participating in that. I saw Joe with the spaces. I saw Azario reaching out. I saw Kevin engaged, talking to people. It's clear that Canada is interested in having a conversation, want your voices heard. You should be heard. And now we were able to bring this up to party leaders. So thank you all very much for your support of the show and participating in helping me make this show what it can be. None of this was pre-planned. Max just hit us up last minute and said, look, I got an opening here. Can you make that work? We did. He did. There you go. And he also gave us 50% more time than we asked for. So Maxime, if you're listening, merci beaucoup, monsieur, and good luck, bon chance in Manitoba. And I'll be seeing you soon. Kev, do you have any closing comments for Canada?
No, like I think it's good. I think the way that what we're doing is important, because in order to change society, right, it has to be a multifaceted approach. You can't just change it in one round. And I think the most important focus that we have to be looking at is on education. So it's conversations like this. It's getting the word out, and the efforts that we're putting in today. It's not going to change society tomorrow. It's not going to change society next week, next month, or next year. But when we start talking about, in 5, 10, 15 years from now, if we keep this ball rolling, and if we keep this momentum going, and if we're able to affect one person or 10 people, where they can affect another 5, 10 people moving forward, then you have a chain reaction, right? And then you'll be able to, take hold of society and move it away from this, crazy leftist controlled country, and back to more of a freedom and independence point of view, because that's all it really is, right? It's collectivism versus individualism, and right now collectivism has the power and control, and this is why we're seeing everything that we're seeing, the absolute lunacy from all aspects of society. So the only way that we're going to change that is through education, and it starts with conversations like this.
I agree. Education is very key, and conversations like this are the seeds of a grassroots effort. You got to plant these seeds everywhere so this grass can grow. Donald, do you have some closing comments? And let's check your mic this time, and you're good.
I think that if he wins one seat, if we win one People's Party seat in Parliament, the effect will be monumental. He'll win the seat for all Canadians, and he will be the only opposition in Parliament. I think that the effect of that cannot be underestimated.
Absolutely. The talking point for a lot of people is the PPC can't win. So if that talking point's off the table, the doors will open, and I think you'll see a purple wave in 2025 if he's successful here. Joe, you want to close up the panel and have some final thoughts for the panel?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I would like to perhaps end this with a message of hope for Canada. It was just presented for the last 2.5 hours, Canada. Hope is on the horizon. It could arrive on the eve of the 19th. And even if it doesn't, by Max's own words, you'll see in October 25. Canada's worth it. I think that's really the message. There's a lot of hopelessness in the world today. We see it in the chat. Why vote? Why not vote is the response. My message to Canada is this. Hope is the evidence of you taking action. Manifest the hope by taking action, by getting involved, by having the conversations, not being afraid to approach topics, and have the courage to express yourself freely, because in this country, you have the right of free expression. Take the time to care about your neighbor in your community, to have the conversations so that Canada can continue to be free and strong. It's here, it's now, it's today. Reach out to someone, get mad and make a difference. Thank you, Canada, and enjoy the day. And remember, Canada Day is not too far away. See you then.
Here, Joe. Thank you so much to my panel. Thank you all very much. Thank you to my chat. Thank you to my friends. Thank you to the people that don't like us. It all helps to get the message out, and I really appreciate it. To everybody that showed up today, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I do thank you for being here, and I am inspired more than ever to continue this fight. So on that note, remember, God bless.